on the matter by a public hearing that unfortunately means that the public can no longer speak. It's just correct, City Attorney?
Yes.
Okay, it's just basically the committee. We did receive two communications that were received timely in terms of the public hearing. One of them is from a resident on Arch Street, basically saying that, recommending that we should vote no on increasing the fees, saying that Channel 8 is on the low list of to-watch channels. Okay. Then there's another comment from a Bradford Road individual, also urging a no vote, basically on the basis of that their bills are already taking enough out of their wallet, and other than taping city council and school meetings, Cheshire TV's programming choices are not theirs, and that they don't want to pay for them. So again, these were timely, and they are in the official record. I think it's just appropriate for the committee at least to hear. So what we are discussing is the potential, as requested, raising the franchise fee from 3.25% to 3.5%. Hearing was held on August 7th. Someone from staff representing, giving some guidance, please.
Thank you. I'm Rebecca Landry, the IMS Director and Assistant City Manager. We currently are in the process of renegotiating the renewal to the operating agreement with Cheshire TV. So it's not the franchise agreement now, that's different. We also have an operating agreement that has expired as a negotiation process for renewal. So it was our understanding that this subject would be put on more time until that negotiation process is complete.
Yes. Committee comments on the subject? Yes.
But you just said that there were two different issues, so why would the franchise fee have to be dependent on the operating agreement?
Right, they are not codependent. However, the breakdown of how the franchise fee is distributed to the two organizations, the city and Cheshire TV, is dictated by that operating agreement. And because it is expired in the process of renegotiation, it's just not settled at this point.
But if, for example, if you do the new agreement and it gets backdated to the original, the end of the current one, if the franchise fee went from $325 to $350, the city would still be made whole, wouldn't it?
Yes, however, I think also if it were to move forward prior to the renegotiation of the agreement, that the current breakdown would apply until it changes. So if it goes from 3.25 to 3.5, and the current breakdown is the city gets about 10% and Cheshire TV gets 90%, that just wouldn't change. That would hold still until unless it were to change in the new agreement. So either way you look at it, yes, there is still a breakdown that would apply until that final agreement.
The split is a different discussion from what the subscribers would be tapped for. Either the 3.25 that they're paying, or the 3.5 that is being requested. So they really are two different issues.
Okay.
But I'm in no rush to raise the charges to the public myself. Yeah.
It is time of the essence from anybody's perspective. You know, how long will these negotiations take?
Not from staff's perspective. I don't think it is a rush. That's my take at the present time.
And how long will the negotiations take?
We're in the process of negotiating. I don't have an exact date for you. I imagine it'll take a couple of months.
City Manager.
Yeah, I was going to ask you for a ballpark. I didn't know maybe down to October 31st.
Thank you, Joe, MacLean City Manager. And thank you, Rebecca. I'm probably going to help you a little bit with this question. I think that we're going to achieve the negotiations very quickly. We had a very satisfactory meeting with two participants here in the back room, Tom Cook and Lee Perkins, representing Cheshire TV. I believe that Rebecca's just trying to express, doing a very good job expressing, I should say, that there's been at least one issue that we still are working on. I think we came to some possible tentative ways in which to agree on something here in the short term. So a little bit of tune-up, I would say we can probably move this very quickly, and I would guess that we can make an adjustment relative to the split of the franchise fee if we need to.
John, but again, we're not talking about the split, it's the 3 1/4, 3.5.
Yes, but in our negotiations with Cheshire TV, that has been part of a conversation with us. And so but I do believe that we can deal with that without having to complicate this particular discussion here this evening.
I just heard two things. You said it was going to be rather quickly, and then Mrs. Landry said that there was no urgency on the staff's part. And so to me, when I'm sitting home listening to it, and I know that the contract has expired, and then the city goes and says there's no urgency on our part, that doesn't look like good. She may have misspoke, but that's when she said it was no urgency on staff's part.
Well, thank you for pointing it out.
My understanding of the question was urgency in the need to raise the franchise fee, not in the negotiation process. I understood the question to be, is there urgency to raise the fee for any reason? And my response to that was no, I don't believe there is. So I'm sorry for the confusion.
Okay, so this is what happens when two people from staff start talking about the same issue. But both of us are involved in the same negotiation, and we didn't have a chance here to speak before this meeting this evening, which is probably my fault. I'm not available to her. But I do think that if we were to hear from the people representing Cheshire TV, they would say there is an urgency from their perspective, and that would be what you would expect. I think that the answer, honestly, from the city's perspective would be not so much, because we're not the ones that asked for the rate increase or the franchise fee increase, but we understand why they're asking for that. We've done a lot of work with them relative to this particular issue, and for the purposes of getting on with that process, I'm differing just a little bit here with Rebecca, with all great respect to her and deference to her good work in this regard. I think we can accommodate both processes.
Do we expect to be dealing with this at the next FOP meeting?
Well, if we can't,
You don't have the crystal ball.
I think we'll be able to deal with it within the next several. And if we can't, we'll certainly be able to give a good answer why we can't.
I guess Rebecca probably can answer this. If this is passed by the council, how long is it going to take for Time Warner to implement?
It will be 60 to 90 days before it is actually charged to the consumers and collected, and then passed on to the city.
For the benefit of the folks at home, the difference between the 3.25 and the 3.5, what is the stated need for the increase or the use of the increase?
I believe that should come from Cheshire TV.
Which they can't speak at this meeting, because it's been a public
I
hearing.
could give you information on the amounts and what it is, and I think we've already got that on the record, but if you're interested in that.
Not the amounts, they're just trying to give the public a little more information other than just raising the price.
For the public's benefit, the franchise fee is collected by Time Warner. It is paid to the city. The city passes on the lion's share of that to Cheshire TV for their operations. Cheshire TV has mentioned in the past that they are interested in doing more. They have good ideas for how they can expand their content, and their costs are not going down.
Okay. That sounds like a reasonable explanation. You know, again, just trying to, with the communicators also, what we're talking about to the public. Yes, Terry?
Well, I think I heard at the public hearing from representatives from Cheshire TV is that they had been incurring costs for quite some time, and the addition of Channel 10, I'm not sure if that added any cost, but they did recently cut back on some of the services that they offered to some of the people who wanted to get programming on. And if we're talking about a couple months for negotiations and then another 90 days for Time Warner, I would think that we should get the ball rolling as soon as we can. I don't anticipate that we're going to turn this down. So just in the interest of keeping Cheshire TV going smoothly, I'd be in favor of voting on it this evening.
Any questions? Well, our comment from staff is to at least put it on more time until the next meeting, so maybe this will motivate them. But
My turn to make a motion.
yes,
I agree with Terry that this needs to move along. And but I don't agree with taking it a couple of months. I think it either has to come back to the FOP our next meeting, or as the city manager says, in 2 meetings we should know a reason why it ain't happening. If the agreement between the city concerning the operation of it, that's totally different than the franchise fee. And I think the franchise fee would have to be voted on. It should be voted on this month.
and therefore, you want to make a motion, please? Let's be a bit decisive.
I move that this committee recommend to the city council that they increase the franchise fee from 3.25% to 3.5%.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Committee comments? Public comments? No, public can't comment, sorry. Councilors can't comment, so it's just us. I will comment. I think that this should be held on more time. I am not necessarily in support of raising the franchise fee as a concept, and if we are voting on this as the motion has been stated, I will be voting no. There, having said anything else, all in favor? We've got 3, we've got 1 opposed. Okay, so that goes forward to the City Council for its vote, and there is the potential that maybe there will be more information or something, or we may see it back again anyway. Final item on our agenda this evening. This is an item that was open for discussion at a previous meeting. City Manager. There was an item that was brought to us via the manager's office. New concept in terms of filling police vacancies, where it takes a long time to hire, train, and to get an officer on the street. I'll let the city manager continue.
My job is done. Thank you very much. You're right on track. This came as a result of a conversation that we had during our budget sessions, and several members of City Council, particularly this committee, were very concerned about the numbers of police officers and our inability over the years to be able to keep our full quota of officers. And part of that is because of the very rigorous and exacting process we have for actually bringing people on board, sending them to the academy, making sure they go through a very, very strenuous but excellent training program, and we have people wash out because we do have very high standards for our Keene Police Department. As a result of that, we tend to not be at full complements, and I think the City Council recognized that. I think Councilor Powers, Councilor Filio in particular, both recognized that, and so I indicated at that time that I'd go back and work with the staff to see if I could come back with some way of attempting to try to keep that full complement going. And what we came up with was a process whereby, utilizing funds that were available from the previous year, we put aside a certain amount of money, which would enable us to send more than one candidate to the academy, and then to have that number of candidates actually working through the system. In the event that we had a surplus in a given year of successful candidates by one, for example, well, we would be able to carry that extra person for that year. And then because we're always having retirements and other ways, other attrition, we would absorb the additional officer into our complements. So we felt that this was a reasonable way to try to bring our levels of police officers to the full complement, recognizing, I think, as the city council and those two individuals on the council, that our policing is very important in a community that has 3 colleges, a vibrant downtown, and lots of activity. So this is our program for doing that.
Comments, questions? We don't actually have, other than just this agenda item, we don't have any motion, or this was already previously discussed. And we had a motion from when it came up the first time. And I know there were some questions on the committee. Some questions on the committee regarding not the concept, but the funding mechanism.
Yes, I believe that the concern was, well, why not use lapsed dollars that occur over a given year rather than take the lapsed dollars from the previous year. And the reason I would encourage you to stay with the program that we've offered and recommended, because we know we have those dollars, we don't know we have the others. If there were any particular issue where we had to have additional overtime or other costs associated with any kind of disaster or crisis, we would not have the additional funds, and I would be reluctant to release those funds until the very end of the year when we begin to determine whether or not we can be a surplus. This gives us a little bit of a padding, if you will, that we don't have to depend on the current budget. We can put aside a small amount of money that we know is defined and is available to us and allows us with some sense of safety relative to the overall fiscal responsibility to go forward.
Yeah.
2 questions. So how long would this fund go? Would it go from year to year, or would it continue over? And second, would this only be funded from surplus of the previous year's police budget, or would it come out of the general fund?
It could come out of general fund, but right now I think that we recognize there's been a surplus of lapsed salary, and it's only good for 1 year. The city council will revisit this again next year, most likely ask us for an update relative to how successful have we been, what has it cost, what's the attrition rate been, and then reappropriate next year if you felt so inclined. So this is for 1 year. And you might call it an experiment to see if we can actually power up our numbers in the police department accordingly.
I think my question was, why wasn't it put in the original budget? I mean, we knew it were 2 officers down, or 3.
We have the money in the budget for the officers, if you will, but what we're really talking about here is sending an extra candidate to a school, to the academy.
Right, but there are 2 or 3 officers that aren't being filled. Not
necessarily all the time. Sometimes that just happened to occur at that one given moment that we were down because we had lost, through an announcement that we had several retirements that occurred that we hadn't been able to plan for previously. I suppose the police chief could speak to this. And about what he believes to be an appropriate program relative to this excess of money for police officers.
Yeah.
During the budget discussions, this was brought forward. At that time, there was no additional money put into the budget to accommodate those conversations. And that's what really prompted the city manager, the finance director, and I to go back and talk about this to try to come up with some type of plan or some type of system that could accommodate what was brought forward to us by the council, really. So currently, I can tell you, we have 2 frozen positions, and we've had those frozen for a number of years. I would say probably at least 8 to 10 years now. Right now, I have 2 officers in training, and I've had 1 retirement, 1 resignation in the last 2 months, and I have an officer retiring next week. So I'll have realistically 5 unfilled police officer positions that actually go out and do solo patrol work. The 2 officers that I have in training, I really don't count as deployment because they've just begun their field training program. They're in their 2nd week, and it's a 14-week program. and then they'll go to the police academy for 14 weeks, beginning in January. So we'll get them back sometime in the springtime and hopefully have them ready to be on solo patrol and producing for us sometime late spring, early summer. That's if we hit the police academies right. We always do our field training programs first because that's really where we lose folks in our field training.
Yeah.
And also, and I think it was answered for me, in most other fields, you know, I went to college for a journalism degree. Police don't do that?
We have degrees from all kinds of fields now. It used to be, we used to get officers with criminal justice degrees. But that's really not adequate to training for them to go on the road and do the work of a police officer. That's more intensive, that's more specific training. Actually go out and learn skill sets, patrol and arrest and prosecution and all the things that we do. A criminal justice degree or any degree really, to me, demonstrates that people have the capacity to learn, broadens their horizons, it broadens their perspectives, it gives a broad view of the world, really. And I think when you come to us, when we hire you, when we think you have what it takes to be a Keene police officer, then the real training begins, regardless of what your background in education was.
But excuse me, I think my question was about the police academy. The police academy will not accept, I mean, if I went and got a degree in criminal justice, I could not apply to the New Hampshire Police Academy to get my certification and then go out and try to find a job?
You could actually self-tuition into the New Hampshire Police Academy if they have openings. And I can tell you, for every academy class, and they hold 4 a year now, actually in May of 2015, they're expanding the academy from 14 weeks to 16 weeks. You could self-tuition in if there is a slot available, and they take 60 they take 60 recruits to attend every academy class. There are waiting lists for police departments every academy class now. So no one's really self-tuitioned in since they've begun the program, and I think that was perhaps 3-4 years ago. They just haven't had the availability.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it, there's two things. You want to create this fund, so for example, you said you have an unexpected retirement coming next week. You didn't plan for that retirement, so you're going to have extra overtime costs and other stuff that's going to eat up part of your budget. And the second part is, when you're sending someone through the field work and all that process, you're paying them, but if they fail to make it, then you have to start all over again. And so you're not budgeting for that unplanned, whether it's a medical or disability or some reason, or someone gets a better job and disappears. And second, you really can't budget for someone washing out.
Correct.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to send an officer through the academy?
The police academy, I would say start to finish when we bring them on board and we hire them. By the time we equip them and get them through our field training and through the academy, we've spent approximately $45,000.
Wow. There's no tuition, however. That's not.
Yes.
He does not have to pay a tuition fee to the academy. That's the cost, the personnel cost and equipment cost. Correct. For the individual.
So the city doesn't pay the
No,
police academy?
there's no charge to attend the police academy.
Oh, okay.
The officers attend and we pay them to attend.
Unless you're a journalism major.
Well, when I got a job, I had to go find a job. I didn't pay for my own college. I just thought it was kind of fun.
Okay, and I think it's pretty clear that we have an issue to be dealt with that has become an even more severe issue with all this retirement going on. And knowing some of the officers that are not retiring this year, pretty likely the year or the year after, they will. It just doesn't pay to keep working and working and working with the retirement system as it is. I think that this is a creative approach to dealing with the situation, and I'm in favor of it. Council Powers?
So I'm the guy that, started the pot here, and we need to do something. And we talked about it briefly in the budget process, and we talked more about the number of officers, not the hiring process, et cetera. We need to talk about that further, not the time tonight, but we need to look at that. This is a very good process in terms of trying to get ahead of the curve. We know what happens every year. It happens as long as probably Kenny's been here, and as long as I've been around. But I believe we can do this within the existing budget. There's really, you got one resignation in the last 2 months, and you got a retirement coming up. So there's lapsed dollars in the current budget. Setting up a special fund for one particular department just doesn't seem like it's good business to me. It doesn't seem as if we're projecting out when we know statistically what happens in this organization, or, you know, why not next week, let's set up a fund for the Public Works Department. They got a lot of manholes that they need to take care of. It just doesn't seem like a good business perspective when, easily enough, if all conditions were met, if there were the candidates, and there were the slots in the police academy, and there was the timing in the training program, put that extra body on, because you know by the time they get to the end of the academy and the training thing, somebody else is going to have retired or resigned. And to take the fund, so you set, I don't think you should set up a special fund that just one department has for an operational perspective. But then to take it from last year's money is just wrong from my perspective as I look at the budget and how we tell the taxpayers we're going to spend their money. We didn't spend that money this year. That's good in some respects. We got a little surplus. Give it back to them. Get that tax rate. We're never going to get it down, but put it against next year's budget so that you can do projects like this or others that are very, very necessary without bringing the rate up tremendously. So I support the idea, but I can't support the funding mechanism when it can be, manager can just do this.
As a question for the city manager, if this wasn't called a fund, couldn't you just call it a line item?
Yeah, I think so, because it's really, what we're really talking about here is unencumbered, unallocated fund balance, which the city council reallocates every year for a variety of purposes. We balance our budget every year with unallocated or undesignated fund balance. So it's not really taking it from a specific line item, even though many have contributed to the fund balance. So to the extent that the city council would come back later, and if we overspend Kenny's budget and would authorize that additional money from the contingency or the fund balance, that would certainly work as well. This is just a little cleaner by doing it this way, but I understand Councilor Power's concern. It really all goes to the same bottom line. So you take a few dollars from unallocated fund balance this year. If it's used, then it's the same thing as if we had taken it from the lapsed salary dollars or some other place in this year's budget. In the end, it will not create a problem relative to the fund balance or the amount of money that the city has to spend. It's going to continue to carry forward. All we're really doing is saying to the staff is you can go ahead right now without knowing the final outcome of the budget year. You can proceed now to send people to the academy and incur these additional expenses because we've put aside a few dollars.